What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So it seems like every time we're coming up on a big release for the Nintendo Switch, it just leaks out early online, and it looks like that same thing has happened once again for Nintendo's next big release coming up on Friday. And it doesn't seem like it'd be a big deal at first, but then you realize that single player still kind of been shrouded in mystery a bit here. Well, no longer, as spoilers are popping up all over the place. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Halo Infinite after 343 announced that the split-screen co-op was canceled with their latest roadmap. It seems that fans have taken matters into their own hands, and we're also going to be talking about The Last of Us Part 1. This, though, has to do with the Collector's Edition having some issues. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Live Alive. Now, this released over the summer, a little over a month ago now, and it looks like things are moving along pretty well for this game. Remember, it's a remake of a game that only released in Japan on the Super Famicom. That coming in at about 260,000 copies sold lifetime, and we can see this, where it looks like Live Alive has now sold 500,000 copies worldwide. Again, it's been out for a little over a month, and when you consider the expectations they probably set for this, I mean, the fact that it's a game that was not released worldwide, not many people know about it, and it's kind of done in the HD 2D, but also it's like this odd JRPG. I don't think they were considering this to be selling millions of copies out of the gate. They seem pretty happy with it, talking about this on the live stream, which once again makes me wonder what would be next for HD 2D, because it appears all the releases they've done so far, they've been pretty satisfied when it comes to the overall sales for it. So does this mean that, yeah, Chrono Trigger could go into there, Final Fantasy Tactics, or just new intellectual properties? A lot of possibilities, but good to see that HD2D continues to roll along. Also, there's a lot of excitement and hype building online around the idea of there being a Nintendo Direct here pretty soon. I still think it's next week, but I guess it could happen at any time with an announcement. And it looks like now we are starting to see some games get teased as being part of that presentation. For example, the Snitch, who has basically been 100% correct with all of the little hints they've been dropping. We can see this posted up in their Discord, apparently, and it is pointing towards It Takes Two for the Switch. And yeah, that kind of makes sense. I mean, essentially the emojis here are hinting towards like all the different levels in It Takes Two, and then obviously you can see the Switch logos on either side of it. So it seems like that's a game we can kind of look towards as part of the Direct, and it makes sense. I mean, yeah, it's been more than a year, but It Takes Two in general with the split Joy-Cons, you can hand one to a friend and they can play split screen in that game that's completely built around co-op. Makes a lot of sense. So not shocked to hear that we'll probably see this at a Direct. Most likely, again, I'm going to say next week. Oh, and it looks like ahead of Tokyo Game Show, we are starting to see some movement from Konami here. For example, it appears that they have now renewed the trademark for Suikoden. And this just in time, of course, to get everyone's hopes up around there being some sort of announcement at Tokyo Game Show. I'm wondering if they would do a collection of the previous titles. I know, like, Suikoden 2 is very expensive on the original PlayStation. It'd be kind of cool to see them throw it into a collection, and Konami's been doing collections quite a bit recently. Of course, Castlevania, even like the Cowabunga collection, Konami was involved with that, so that wouldn't surprise me. We're also hearing about something with Metal Gear, where there could be a Metal Gear Solid collection on that side. So I'm hoping there's more to this than just a standard, like a standard trademark update. Hopefully there are plans for something with Suikoden, because that would be some pretty serious disappointment, as we are, of course, building up interest and hype going into Tokyo Game Show. It'd be fun to see Konami actually participate. And by participate, I mean with something other than a new pachinko machine. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo's next big release, leaking out online early, and this seems to happen like every single time. And then after the street date is broken, which we can see this post where they show the game selling seemingly online for just over $60 with shipping. After this happens, typically the person will then dump it through like a hacked switch and then just drop it online. And it's like, good luck, it's gonna show up everywhere. The thing with this though, being Splatoon 3, is the multiplayer servers, to my knowledge, they don't actually go live until like just about release day. So that means they're mostly going to be hanging out and playing the single player, which, while they have talked about it, right, they haven't like shown any major boss battles or anything there. So there's still been a lot of speculation and curiosity, I'll say, around what is in store with the single player. And wouldn't you know it, we're already starting to see everything leak online, including the final boss of the game. And it does seem like there are actually some pretty sizable story elements that are being spoiled online, and some of it is just done through the thumbnail. If you go to the Splatoon subreddit, you're not really seeing a lot of spoilers there because they're getting pulled as they're being posted up, but people are basically saying, hey, I went to YouTube and there was a thumbnail with the final boss right there on the homepage. So it's going to be very difficult to dodge any of these spoilers. I mean, if you're not really interested in the single player, which Splatoon obviously is heavily multiplayer focused, you probably don't really care, and you might even want to go see some of the spoilers, which they're pretty easy to find. There's an entire Twitter account right now that is just dedicated to putting screenshots and videos, like very quick shots of the bosses or anything going on. So, hey, I mean, technically, if you want, you can check it out. Otherwise, well, you might want to put the blinders on. Good luck. It's going to be tough, especially after this game, which it most likely will, gets dumped and then leaked online. It's going to be everywhere. So, hey, I'm looking forward to Splatoon 3. I think the multiplayer is going to be a lot of fun, especially after the Splatfest that they did. It was a good time. So, looking forward to getting to Friday, hopefully spoiler-free for the most part. Next up, let's talk about Halo Infinite. Last week, 343 released the roadmap going forward that will be running through Season 3 that will put us like midway through 2023. And unfortunately, that means that Season 3 has been pushed into next year, and they also had to cancel split-screen campaign co-op, which they had talked about quite a bit leading up to release, and it got people excited for the idea of being able to play couch co-op in Halo, and that's something that 343 really missed out on with Halo 5, and they made an emphasis as to, hey, if we're going to do Halo, we have to get split screen involved here. They got it back for multiplayer, so I at least want to point that out, but campaign co-op has been a disaster since it's just now coming out in November, you know, like a full year after the game released. But of course, this has led to a lot of conversation around why they pulled split screen co-op, and people started showing off that you can indeed glitch your way into campaign split screen co-op right now on your Xbox. Like, you can see this post up over on Twitter from Halo Creation saying, so after checking on Series X, the menu glitches to play Halo Infinite campaign split screen still work. No crashing cutscenes, no issues with AIs, etc. Never thought I would have to go through this to play with friends at home. And then they did have like a full tutorial, so you yourself can do this. There is one thing I will point out. There are some glitches that have been pointed out here. Like, for example, there is a chance that your save game could be deleted. So you may want to do this on a separate account where you can then start up fresh and not really care about potentially a save file that you're well into the game for. And now there was the question around, okay, maybe there's something that has to do with that Xbox One VCR. Remember, this is a game that supports that original Xbox One. Well, we can see this on Twitter. Chris says campaign split screen co-op running on the VCR Xbox One. Here's a video of it. And the Xbox One, the original one, like from 2013, it runs Halo Infinite, but doesn't run it like well. I mean, if you're going to be somewhat competitive at all in Halo Infinite, you're probably going to look to play it on an Xbox Series S or an Xbox Series X. The Xbox One does struggle with the game, and when you go to split screen, it makes you think, okay, it's going to do even worse. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll get frame rate tests and analysis on this. I would be shocked if Digital Foundry isn't already planning a video around this, because I've even seen a video where people have 4-player split screen going on here, which is like, wow, that's odd that we would see 343 back away from the idea of this split screen campaign. The only thing I can think of is there are issues that we haven't come across yet in this. Like, as you progress through the game, maybe there is a part that just hard locks the game and there's no way past it, and it's a bug that they can't figure out on any one of the systems they have it released on. Remember, this was something that was released across several platforms: the Xbox One, the One S, the One X, the PC, which has its own set of configurations, the Series S, the Series X, and then through xCloud. So there's a lot that they have to account for here with this one game. And it's kind of unfortunate because if they had delayed Halo Infinite, I know, another year, and it's coming out this holiday, technically they could have released it as an Xbox Series only game, and they wouldn't have to support the Xbox One for what's going to be another 7-8 years. Remember, this is a 10-year plan. And while I think it's good that they were able to have more people play it through the Xbox One, you still have to think more, I guess, forward thinking into the future, and if that Xbox One will make it to the end of Halo Infinite's life. And I don't think it will. I think they will get to a point where it's just a hard cutoff, and then you think, okay, well, they probably should have just done it as an Xbox Series game all along. So we'll see how this whole split screen campaign co-op stuff with Halo Infinite continues to evolve online. Maybe 343 actually sits down and explains what the problem was in the game with bugs or something in that mode, and I'll be curious to see if we get more of an analysis around the split screen glitch with someone like Digital Foundry. Next up, let's talk about Last of Us Part 1, specifically the collector's edition that you could order on PlayStation Direct Store. We can see this posted up over on VGC, where they say The Last of Us Part 1's Firefly Edition is reportedly turning up damage to some customers, and Sony is so far declining to provide replacements. I have seen some people mention that they were getting like a credit back to their account if they were able to show that it was damaged. So I guess if you're showed up damaged, you definitely want to contact Sony about this and see if, I guess, you can get a credit or even a replacement, because it does seem like this is very much widespread. For example, there are tweets all over the place that VGC was citing showing a very shoddy packaging job here. It really looks like that they didn't use much of any extra bubble wrap other than, I guess, the little mailer that they were using here, which was already stretched kind of thin by the packaging for the Firefly edition. Remember, this is a $100 edition for The Last of Us Part 1, which is already coming under fire and scrutiny for being $70. And I mean, the images go on and on and on. So this isn't like a one-time thing where, oh, the UPS person threw it against the wall really hard when they were delivering it. This seems to come down to the packaging that was used here. I mean, if you take a look at Last of Us Part 1, that Firefly edition over on eBay, it's going for 3 to 4 times its original $100 value. But some of the listings I noticed actually shows pictures of it being damaged. They're like, I'm just selling this thing, getting whatever I can for it, because I don't want a collector's edition that has like the top of the bubble mailer stuck completely to it. And if I pull it off, it rips it, or it's dented and smashed in the corners. I mean, remember, the people who are buying these, which they keep selling out of them anyway on their website, the people who are buying these are like the hardcore fans who wanted that premium edition because they're massive fans of The Last of Us, right? I mean, it's a very good game. On the PS3, it's one of the best experiences I've had overall for a narrative-driven experience at that time back in 2013. And I will admit, the game on the PS5, it's still good. In a vacuum, where we're not talking about pricing or any of that, it is a really good experience. If you've never played The Last of Us at all, like, it is a game you're going to enjoy going through it. But it's odd to me that the packaging is the culprit here when you figure, okay, we're shipping out this collector's edition to someone who paid $100 for this. Let's make sure it's wrapped just a bit more with like 10 cents of bubble wrap. As someone who does buy things like fairly expensive GameCube games at times on eBay, I will even go as far as to message the person to be like, hey, can you throw a little bit of extra packaging material around that game to make sure it gets here correctly? Because yeah, you can't really trust the mail or delivery service. You have to assume that they're just gonna be throwing that thing around. And I saw some people online say that this is a company that Sony hired to ship the stuff out and package it. So it wasn't Sony that did this, but it came from the PlayStation Direct Store. So while it probably was a company that Sony hired to ship these things out, it's still coming from Sony. So it goes back to the top. And they just keep getting hit with PR hit after PR hit after PR hit. I mean, really, you think that Sony would go, okay, let's go ahead and we'll RMA these things in, and we'll replace them, but they're not even doing that. It's very, very Odd stuff. Odd stuff. Certainly not a good look. And hey, again, Sony needs to get some sort of event going here soon to get people talking about games for 2023, to get people excited again, and not necessarily looking at what's happened for them in the second half of 2022 so far, which hasn't been the greatest. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Konami again, which is absolutely shocking. You know, it does kind of seem like Konami could have some big time announcements coming up here soon, which does include Silent Hill. That's right, Nate may finally get his win. He's been talking about Silent Hill for a long time now, but I mean, it makes sense now why MVG went to Australia because, well, take a look at this. Silent Hill 2 remake screenshots allegedly leak online. I can't show these screenshots because I have seen Konami come down with the DMCA strikes before, and I believe these are real, so I think they are going to move swiftly this week, is what I'll say for anyone showing these too much. But essentially, which I will link down below to Eurogamer, they have some of them posted up with the tweets. Essentially, we're seeing kind of an over-the-shoulder look, very blurry images, which, once again, leads me to believe that these are real, although the only way they could get even more believable is if they were taken off of a laptop in the corner and you're running through the office building to capture them with the worst cell phone imaginable. But this appears it would be Bloober Team who would do this, and we've heard there are multiple Silent Hill projects in the works currently, and mostly it sounds like Konami is just licensing out the names and likenesses to build a game with, and Silent Hill 2 Remake that'd be pretty exciting. I mean, Silent Hill 2 was very, very good on the PS2. They did that HD collection that wasn't great in terms of performance or functionality, so I would like to see them get an absolute classic in Silent Hill 2 and bring it up and more modernize, of course, visuals, controls, all this, because I think that game in particular we remember very fondly, but then you go back and you play it and you're like, okay, yeah, this is definitely a game from the PS2 era. But either way, it's exciting stuff to hear this at least get put in motion a bit more. It sounds like these screenshots are fairly old, so they're not necessarily representative of what we could see at Tokyo Game Show. I really hope Konami shows up at TGS and I mean just goes all out. We got all these different announcements and it kind of feels like the old days of Konami before they turned into Konami, who's doing NFTs and a bunch of pachinko machines. But hey, we'll find out in a couple of weeks. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, would you buy a Metal Gear Solid collection, that being 1, 2, and 3 all remastered from Konami at $60 for the current platforms? Look at that, 42% said yes, I would buy it ASAP. 33% said I would buy it later on a sale. And then only 25% said they're not interested. You know what? Konami, you got to get on this. There are actually quite a few potential buyers here. I didn't put 4 in because 4 would need the remake treatment. I don't think they're remastering that from the PS3. They'd probably have to rework that completely. So that sounds like it's going to be a pretty large task on its own. But having 1, 2, and 3 all remastered for current systems, the Switch, Xbox Series, PS5, and on PC, which I think would be a big deal there too, that'd be exciting stuff. Even at a $60 price, I think those 3 games are completely worth picking up, and having it physically would be pretty awesome. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Silver saying, yeah, there's something seriously wrong at 343. I was on their side for the longest time, but I'm beyond baffled how horribly they've handled Infinite post-launch, especially after all the problems fans had with previous titles, nothing but constant delays and canceled features that were advertised to be working prior. I'm sure there's tons of people there who actually do care about the series, but if the studio is going to stick around, there has to be serious changes with the higher-ups. Yeah, I actually think the developers who are creating Halo Infinite, they got it right with the engine. I mean, the game feels good. It plays good. It feels like an older Halo game, just more modernized, but they do not know what they're doing when it comes to a live service. And to me, that comes down more or less to who's steering the ship, and the upper management, you're right, needs some changes. And you know what? I think there are some changes that are ongoing right now. They're not going to come out and advertise it, but the fact that we are seeing more and more of Joseph Staten as we've gone along, I think is telling us that, yeah, he's steering the ship now. So I'm hoping that as we get into next year and we see what Certain Affinity's working on with Halo Infinite and they continue to add more content, we can come back to the game years later, kind of like what happened with Master Chief and Collection, and it's just in a much better place overall. So we'll see. It's just, hey, Halo Infinite, 10-year project, and we're like a year in, so we still have plenty of runway here for them to, I guess, get it right. We'll see. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was Splatoon 3 leaking out early? Are you concerned about the story spoilers being out there? And then also, what about Last of Us Part 1 in that collector's edition? Did yours show up damaged? And then Konami. Could they really show up to Tokyo Game Show with a bunch of big-time announcements? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.